Rain had not stopped for months, and the planet, once full of green valleys and bright cities, now drowned under black water. The sky hung low and gray, heavy with thunder that sounded like the planet's last heartbeat. In the middle of that endless storm stood what was left of a city dome, half sunk, half cracked, barely holding back the sea that wanted to swallow it whole. Inside, a mother held her small child close, the water already reaching their knees. Her name was Rayan, her face pale with cold and fear. Her arms shook as she wrapped a torn emergency blanket around her daughter. Luma, the child's blue eyes were wide and empty, watching lightning flash across the broken ceiling. Each strike of thunder made her flinch, yet she stayed silent, too tired to cry anymore. Rain pressed a small beacon into the air, its weak light blinking through the fog. It was the last working signal device she had, built from broken parts she found in the ruins. She prayed anyone would see it. Every few hours she whispered to her child, "Someone will come. Someone has to." But she was not sure she believed it anymore. Most ships had stopped flying near this planet. It was marked as lost, destroyed, unsafe. The great floods were not natural. They were punishment. The Empire had wanted the planet empty, and they got what they wanted. Rayan knew that if anyone came, it would not be to help. Still she stayed, because she could not leave. Her child's tiny hand clung to hers, and that was enough to keep her breathing. The wind howled louder, tearing through metal beams. The dome shuddered again, and cold water splashed up to their waists. Rain lifted Luma onto her shoulders, coughing as smoke and salt filled the air. She looked up through the cracks in the ceiling and whispered, "Please," high above the clouds far beyond the dying world. An old human ship drifted between lightning storms. Its name was Ranger's Mercy. Its hull was scratched, engines whining from age. Inside sat a man in a dark jacket, a human scavenger named Jalen Cross. He had come to pick through the ruins for metal and fuel, not to save anyone. He leaned back in his pilot chair, scanning for valuable scraps. His ship computer beeped suddenly, a faint distress signal. He frowned, tapping the screen. The signal was weak but alive. He zoomed in and saw a small heat signature, 2 figures, standing on a rooftop surrounded by floodwater. His brow tightened. "That can't be right," he muttered. "There's no one left down there." The law said humans could not interfere with alien worlds. The law said alien survivors were Empire property. But the screen blinked again, showing one of the figures smaller, lighter. A child. Jalen exhaled slowly. Staring at the image, he knew what it meant if he ignored it. He had seen too many signals fade into silence, too many lives vanish. The child lifted her arm on the scanner feed as if waving. That simple motion hit him harder than any rule. "Ah, damn it," he whispered, turning the controls. Engines roared as his ship dove through the storm clouds. The cruiser shook violently, lightning cracking across the sky. Waves taller than buildings smashed against the surface. His screen flashed warnings. Pressure too high. Visibility 0. Still he didn't stop. The floodlight broke through the fog, cutting a path of light across the ruined dome. Through his cockpit window he saw them, a woman and a child. Standing together, soaked and trembling, Rain's eyes went wide at the sight of a human ship descending. She didn't know if this was salvation or another nightmare. The engine's roar made her fall back, covering Luma's ears. Jalen landed hard. Opening the rear hatch, rain poured in. The smell of salt and metal filled the air. "Hey," he shouted through the storm. "Come on before this place goes under." Rain froze, staring at him. Her people had always been told humans would kill them on sight, but this one had no weapon in his hand, only a blanket. His voice was rough but not cruel. She looked at her daughter, then at the rising water. For a second she hesitated. Then she ran. He caught her arm and pulled them inside just as the dome walls began to collapse. The hatch sealed and water slammed against the ship like fists. The lights flickered. Jalen fell into the pilot seat and pushed the throttle forward. The ship rose through the rain. Engines screaming, Rayan held Luma tight, both shaking as the world below disappeared into black waves. When they broke through the clouds, stars filled the sky. For the first time in months, there was silence. Jalen leaned back, breathing hard. The ship's computer flashed a red warning. Unauthorized rescue detected. Imperial patrols notified. He looked over his shoulder at the alien mother and child huddled on the floor. "You two better be worth it," he muttered under his breath. Rain met his gaze but said nothing. Only the child looked up, her small voice trembling as she whispered, "Thank you, human," and in that moment, In the quiet hum of the cruiser, Jalen knew this rescue was only the beginning, not the end. The hum of the engines echoed through the ship as rainwater dripped from the metal floor. Rain sat in silence, her daughter wrapped tightly in the human's old gray blanket. The warmth of the cruiser felt strange, almost unreal after the endless cold of the flood. Steam rose from their wet clothes, and the faint smell of oil filled the air. Jalen moved around the cockpit, checking controls, his hands quick and rough. Outside, the planet grew smaller, a dark marble swallowed by storms. He watched it through the window for a moment, then turned away. He didn't want to think about how many others he hadn't saved. Rain's voice broke the silence. Soft but sharp. "Why did you come for us?" Jalen shrugged, flipping switches. "Didn't plan to. Guess I've got a bad habit of not listening to orders." She didn't answer, only pulled her child closer. The little girl's breathing had slowed, her eyelids heavy. The ship rocked slightly as they entered orbit. Lightning faded behind them, replaced by stars that glittered cold and distant. The console beeped, bright red letters flashing across the screen. "Unauthorized rescue detected, Imperial patrol en route." Jalen muttered under his breath. Knew it wouldn't be that easy. Rain frowned. "They'll chase you, won't they?" He smirked faintly. "They always do, but I'm faster than most." He pushed a lever forward, and the ship roared into faster-than-light travel. Streaks of light sliding past the window like rivers of fire. Rain held her daughter tightly, watching the human work. There was something odd about him. His ship was patched with alien parts, his jacket worn but clean, and his eyes held a tired look, like someone who'd seen too much. She could sense kindness but also pain buried deep. Jalen opened a storage hatch and tossed her a pack of rations. "Eat, it's not fancy, but it'll keep you alive." She looked at the package with suspicion, then back at him. "You risk your life for strangers," he gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, well, maybe I just hate seeing people drown." She lowered her gaze, remembering the others who hadn't made it. "We were left to die. The Empire said our kind was dangerous. They said we could not be saved." Jalen looked at her, his voice quiet now. "You don't look dangerous to me." Rain looked up, and for the first time their eyes met. In that brief silence, something unspoken passed between them. The same grief, the same weariness of a war that never ended. The ship jolted suddenly, alarms blaring. Jalen cursed and slammed his hand on the console. "Patrol found us, they're early." Through the window, 2 Imperial cruisers appeared, sleek and silver, firing warning shots. Blue energy bursts cut through the void, lighting up the darkness. Rain grabbed her daughter and ducked. "They'll destroy us." "Not if I can help it," Jalen growled. His fingers flew across the controls, the ship twisted hard, dodging blasts that exploded close enough to rattle every bolt. "Hold on!" he shouted, diving between the enemy beams. Luma began to cry softly, the sound small but piercing. Rain tried to calm her, whispering words in her language. Jalen looked back, his jaw tight. "She okay?" "She's scared, she doesn't understand," Rain said. "Neither do I," he muttered, flipping another switch. "But we're still breathing, that's something." The patrol ships moved closer. A voice boomed through the comm. "Human vessel, you are in violation of interspecies law. Surrender your cargo immediately." Jalen grinned. "Cargo? You mean people?" Rayan's eyes widened. "If they catch us, they'll take her away. They'll use her." He didn't ask why, didn't need to. He just tightened his grip on the controls. "Then we don't get caught." The engine screamed as he pushed them to maximum. The stars blurred into light, the ship shook violently, metal groaning under pressure. The enemy ships fired again. One shot grazed their hull, sending sparks across the cabin. Rain screamed as debris flew. Jalen kept the ship steady, his knuckles white. "Almost there, just a little more," he said through clenched teeth. Then, with a blinding flash, the Ranger's Mercy vanished into hyperspace. The radar cleared, silence returned. Only the hum of the damaged engines filled the air. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Rayan looked at him, her voice trembling. "You defied the Empire for us." Jalen leaned back, his face tired but calm. "I've been breaking their rules for years. Might as well make it count." She stared at him, unsure whether to trust him or fear him. The child had fallen asleep again, clutching the corner of his old jacket as Jalen adjusted the navigation path. He muttered to himself, "No turning back now." Outside, the stars stretched ahead, endless and silent somewhere behind them. The Empire prepared to hunt, but inside the small, battered ship, 3 lives had just changed the course of a galaxy, and none of them knew it yet. The stars outside the window no longer looked peaceful. They flickered like eyes watching from the dark. The ship floated in deep space, its lights dimmed and engines cooling. Jalen had shut down every system except life support. He didn't want to be found again. Not by the Empire, not by anyone. Rain sat near the sleeping child, brushing wet strands of hair from her small blue face. The hum of the cruiser was the only sound left. It was strange to her. The quiet, the stillness, no more thunder. No more screaming wind, only silence deep and heavy. Jalen leaned against the control panel, exhausted. His eyes were red from hours without rest. "We'll hide here for a while," he said, voice low. "Let the patrols think we blew up in the jump." Rain nodded but didn't look up. Her hands trembled as she held Luma's small fingers. "They will not stop," she whispered. "The Empire doesn't forgive mercy." Jalen didn't reply, he just stared out into the black void, remembering faces of the people he couldn't save before. His crew. His friends all gone, he thought he'd stopped caring. But somehow this alien child had cracked something open inside him. Hours passed in quiet until the ship suddenly flickered. Lights blinked on and off, systems rebooted. Jalen straightened. "What the hell?" He checked the panels, but no commands had been entered. Then he saw it. The little girl was awake, sitting up on the floor. Her small hand rested against the cold metal wall, glowing faintly. Lines of blue light spread from her fingers, crawling across the surface like veins of fire. The entire ship seemed to breathe. Rain gasped, "Luma!" "No." She tried to pull her daughter back, but the child's eyes had gone bright white. Filled with energy, the hum of the ship deepened, becoming alive. Then one by one, broken circuits began to repair themselves. Wires sparked, screens came online, and the engine core pulsed with fresh power. Jalen stared in disbelief. "She's fixing it." Rain held her daughter close, shaking. "She doesn't understand what she does," she whispered. "Her kind can touch the code beneath the metal. Speak to machines like living things." Jalen frowned, stepping closer. "That's how you survive down there, isn't it?" Rain nodded, her eyes distant. "The Empire called us machine singers. They feared us. Thought we could take control of their fleets. They flooded our world to end our voices." The words hit Jalen like cold water. He stared at the child, still glowing faintly. "They tried to erase you," he said quietly. "And they almost did. She saved me," Rain whispered, tears sliding down her face. "When the floods came, she called the power grid to raise walls, to hold back the sea. She was only 4. The girl's glow began to fade. Her energy spent, Jalen knelt beside her, pulling a small blanket over her shoulders. "She's just a kid," he muttered. "And they tried to kill her for this?" The ship's computer beeped softly. "Scanning systems. Hull integrity restored. Engines stable," it announced in a calm tone. Jalen let out a small laugh, half amazed, half broken. "Well, guess we've got a new mechanic on board." Rain smiled weakly for the first time, though fear still lingered in her eyes. "She's strong. But the Empire can sense her when she connects. They will find us again soon." Jalen looked out the window, thinking the galaxy was wide but nowhere truly safe. Not for a human outlaw and 2 hunted aliens still. Running was better than dying. "Then we keep moving," he said. "Somewhere cold, somewhere dead. Where no one listens." He began setting coordinates, his hands steady this time. "There's a nebula nearby, thick enough to block scanners." As he worked, Rain quietly asked, "Well, why do this for us? You don't even know our names." He paused, the question hanging in the air. "Maybe I don't need to," he said finally. "But I've seen too many good people left behind." "Not this time." She watched him for a long moment, her heart caught between fear and gratitude. "My name is Rain," she said softly. "And this is Luma." Jalen nodded. "Rain and Luma," he repeated, as if making a promise to himself. "All right. Let's get you two somewhere safe." He activated the stealth drive. The ship's lights dimmed to a soft blue, blending into the darkness outside. The nebula glowed faintly, a mist of gold and silver gas. Swirling like ghosts, Rain watched through the window, her hand resting on the glass. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "Yeah," Jalen said, eyes fixed on the controls. "And deadly." The cruiser slipped into the nebula's heart, hidden from scanners but surrounded by strange lights that danced across the hull like whispers. The galaxy outside continued its wars, but inside the small human ship, 3 souls shared a fragile peace in the outlaw, the mother and the child who could speak to machines. And for the first time in years, Jalen felt something he hadn't known since Earth. The quiet spark of hope. Buried deep but still alive, the nebula stretched across space like a painted ocean. Clouds of silver and red gas twisting around the small cruiser. The Ranger's Mercy drifted silently through the mist. Lights dimmed to avoid scanners. From outside, it looked like a ghost ship, lost, forgotten, swallowed by starlight inside. The air was thick with tension. Jalen sat at the pilot seat, eyes scanning faint readings on the radar. Nothing yet, he muttered. Maybe we lost them, but his voice didn't sound certain. Rayan stood near the window watching the colors shift. You don't believe that, she said quietly. Jalen gave a dry smile. You learn fast, he leaned back. Rubbing his temples, the nebula was beautiful. Yes, but it was also deadly. Radiation storms could melt circuits. Magnetic waves could twist compasses. It was the kind of place only desperate people entered in Nurna, and right now, he fit that description perfectly. Luma sat on the floor, tracing shapes in the air with her finger, glowing trails of light following her touch. The energy responded to her like a friend. Soft and alive, Jalen noticed and frowned. She shouldn't do that, right? Won't it alert anyone? Rain shook her head. Here, no. The nebula's energy hides her. She says it feels warm. Jalen blinked. She told you that? Rayan smiled faintly, not with words. She tapped her temple. I can feel what she feels sometimes when she reaches too deep. Jalen looked at the girl again. Something heavy in his chest. He remembered a time when he'd promised never to care again, but that promise was cracking like glass. Hours passed and the silence grew thick. The ship floated deeper into the nebula. Then, a sharp beep. Jalen's head snapped toward the radar. His jaw tightened. They found us. 3 red dots blinked on the screen. Moving fast, Imperial interceptors cutting through the clouds. Rayan's eyes widened. How? They must have tracked the jump signature before we hid, Jalen said. Flipping switches fast. Hold on, this is going to get rough. The cruiser came alive. Engines roaring, plasma trails cutting through the mist. The nebula flashed with lightning as the human pilot pushed the ship through twisting corridors of gas and light. They're faster than me, he muttered. But they don't know this place. Energy blasts ripped through the mist. Explosions lighting the clouds in violent color. The ship jerked as debris hit the hull, alarms screaming. Luma cried out. Clutching her mother, Jalen slammed the side console, forcing the ship into a spin. Come on, come on. The cruiser dove under a glowing ridge of ice dust, lasers passing inches above the hull. Rayan shouted. They'll destroy us. Not yet. He yelled back. I've got a few tricks left. He switched power from weapons to shields, the ship humming with strain. Sparks flew as enemy fire rained down. Jalen gritted his teeth, fighting to keep the ship steady. They're locking on. Suddenly, Luma's small voice whispered from the back. No, Jalen turned. What? Before he could finish, the lights inside the ship flickered blue. The air filled with a faint hum, soft at first, then rising. Luma's eyes glowed white again. She reached out her hand toward the console, and the whole ship pulsed with living light. Rain gasped, Luma, stop! But the child didn't move. Her small voice echoed like a song. Not in words, but in vibration. The metal around them trembled, every panel flickering in rhythm with her pulse. Outside, the enemy ship suddenly stopped firing. Their engines went dark, lights fading one by one. The entire fleet froze mid-chase. Trapped like statues in the mist, Jalen stared in shock. What in... She shut them down. Rayan knelt beside her daughter, holding her shoulders. She reached their systems, she said, trembling. She spoke to their ships. The child's glow dimmed slowly, her breathing weak. It's too much for her, Rayan said, fear in her voice. She's still only a child. Jalen moved fast. Grabbing his medkit, he gently placed an oxygen band around her small face. Hey, stay with us, kid. Her light flickered once more, then faded completely, leaving the ship dim again. The engines hummed steady but quiet. The radar cleared. The interceptors were dead, floating powerless in space. Jalen leaned back in his chair, staring at the dark screen. You weren't kidding, he said quietly. She's not just a survivor. She's a miracle. Rayan looked up at him, eyes full of worry and exhaustion. A miracle, yes, she whispered. But the kind the Empire kills for? Jalen exhaled, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. He looked out the window, the nebula glowing faintly around them. Then we don't stay here, he said. We find a place they can't reach. He reached forward, pressing new coordinates into the system. The map zoomed out, showing the far edge of known space. There's an old mining moon abandoned for years. They won't expect anyone to go there. Rain nodded. Clutching Luma close, "We'll go," she said. "But what will you do when they find out who she really is?" Jalen turned, his expression hard. "Then I'll make sure they regret it." Outside, the nebula faded into black, and the cruiser shot forward like a streak of silver light, leaving behind a trail of dead ships and a growing legend that the Empire would soon fear. The ghost ship that vanished into the storm, carrying a human and two aliens who defied extinction together. The mining moon appeared like a scarred rock floating in the dark. Its surface cracked and dry, with rivers of frozen metal cutting across its craters. The Ranger's Mercy landed softly between two jagged cliffs, steam hissing from the engines. For the first time in days, there was no sound of pursuit. No radar beeps, only silence and dust. Jalen powered down the ship, his fingers trembling slightly from exhaustion. "We're clear for now," he said, though his voice didn't sound sure. He turned toward Rayan and the small figure sleeping against her shoulder. Luma's breathing was soft, but her skin glowed faintly blue, like a heartbeat under glass. Rain laid her daughter gently on the cot, whispering, "She's still weak." Her voice cracked. "Every time she connects, it drains her more." Jalen nodded, pulling open a storage compartment. He handed her a small canister. "Water's recycled, but it's clean." Then he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. That trick she pulled back there shut down 3 Imperial ships like they were candles. He looked at Rain, eyes narrowing. "What exactly is she?" Rain didn't speak at first. She sat beside the cot, brushing Luma's hair. The faint hum of the ship filled the air. "She was born in the labs beneath the ocean," she finally said. "Her father was one of the last machine singers. I was a scientist studying the link between mind and code. When the Empire found out, they called it blasphemy. They called her a threat." Jalen frowned, leaning forward. "A threat to what?" "To control," she whispered. "If she grows, if she learns to reach deeper, she can speak to anything built by hands or mind. Ships, weapons, worlds. Even the Empire's core systems." Jalen leaned back slowly, his thoughts spinning. "So she's not just powerful. She's a key." Rayan nodded. "And they'll do anything to get her back." Silence filled the ship again. The lights flickered faintly. Luma stirred in her sleep, whispering something too soft to understand. Jalen felt a pang in his chest. He didn't know why, but the sound reminded him of his sister's voice when she was small, a memory buried deep under years of war. He stood walking toward the main panel. "If what you're saying is true, we can't stay here long." Rain looked up, her eyes tired. "Where will you take us?" "Out beyond the edge," he said. "There's a smuggler network near the Dark Belt. They hide fugitives. Maybe they'll take you in." "You mean us," she corrected softly. Jalen froze, then looked away. "You don't want me in this, Rain. You don't know what I've done." Her gaze didn't move. "You saved us when no one else would." Before he could answer, the ship's alarm blared suddenly. Red lights flashed across the cabin. Jalen spun to the console. "No, no, no. How did they find us this fast?" Rain stood, her voice shaking. "They're here?" "Not ships," he muttered, scanning the readouts. "Something small, a probe, an Imperial drone. It's broadcasting our position." He grabbed his blaster and ran toward the airlock. The harsh light of the moon flooded in as the door opened. Windless and cold, the probe hovered above the surface, black and silver scanning the ship. Jalen aimed and fired. The blast hit dead center, shattering it in a burst of sparks, but the damage was done. It had already sent a signal. He ran back inside, slamming the door. "They'll be here in hours." Rain grabbed his arm. "We can't fight them again, she's too weak." Jalen's jaw tightened. "Then I'll fight for you." Rain shook her head. "You'll die. Then I'll die trying," he said simply. Turning to the control board, he began arming the defense turrets. The old ship groaned as cannons unfolded from hidden compartments. Rusted but ready, Rain stood frozen, watching him. "You would risk your life for 2 strangers," she whispered. Jalen didn't look back. "You're not strangers anymore," Luma stirred again, her small voice cutting through the tense air. "Mommy," she whispered. "They're coming." Rain rushed to her. "Sleep, my love." "Please," but the child's eyes were open now, glowing brighter than before. Her small hand reached toward the ceiling. The entire ship seemed to tremble under her pulse. Jalen turned, staring in disbelief. "What's she?" Rain's breath caught. She's trying to protect us. The ship's systems flickered to life on their own. The old cannons hummed, targeting the empty sky. Luma's glow grew stronger, her voice, soft but filled with power, echoed through the cabin like a song. Then suddenly all went still. The hum faded, her hand dropped, she fell silent. Jalen rushed to her side. "Luma!" Rain held her tightly, tears streaming down her face. She used everything she had outside. The moon's horizon lit up, a ripple of energy spreading outward, invisible to the eye but deadly to every scanner within 1,000 miles. Jalen watched the monitor, stunned. "She just wiped us off every radar in the sector." Rayan looked up, voice trembling. "She bought us time." Jalen placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes soft but fierce. "Then we make it count." In that quiet, broken cruiser, the three sat together, a soldier without a cause, a mother without a home, and a child who carried the power to rewrite galaxies. The war had not found them yet, but Jalen knew it would, and when it did, he would be ready. The mining moon slept beneath a cracked sky, its frozen plains glowing faintly under the pale light of a dying sun. The Ranger's Mercy rested between two cliffs, half buried in dust, smoke still curling from its engines. Inside, silence pressed against every wall, heavy with the kind of calm that comes before war. Jalen stood at the cockpit staring at the scanner. No blinking lights yet, no movement, but he could feel it deep in his bones. The Empire was coming. They always came, and when they did, they brought more than weapons. They brought judgment. Behind him, Rayan sat beside her daughter, brushing Luma's hair as the girl slept. The faint glow in Luma's skin had dimmed since her last burst of power. She looked small, fragile, almost human. Rayan's voice was a whisper. "She dreams of light." Jalen didn't turn. "She deserves to." Rayan looked up. "You plan to stay, don't you?" He gave a small, crooked smile. "Someone has to make sure you get off this rock alive." She shook her head. "You'll die if you fight them alone." "Probably," he said, tightening the strap on his jacket. "But dying's not new to me." Outside, the sky shifted, a shimmer of blue energy far beyond the horizon. The scanners began to blink red. 1, then 2, then 10 ships. "They're early," Jalen muttered, his voice hardening. He moved quickly, powering up the old defense turrets. Each one groaned as gears turned for the first time in years. Dust fell from the ceiling as the ship came alive again. Rayan watched him, torn between fear and disbelief. "You can't fight them all," she said. "I don't need to," he replied. "Just enough to make them think twice." He opened the storage hatch and pulled out an old metal case. Inside lay his worn rifle, not the kind used for wars anymore, but still deadly enough. "You've done this before," Rayan said quietly. "Too many times," he muttered. Slamming the case shut, the child stirred, her soft voice filling the small cabin. "They're close," she whispered, eyes still closed. "I can hear their ship singing." Rayan froze. "Luma, she's right," Jalen said, checking the radar. 3 cruisers approaching low orbit. He turned to Rayan, his face serious now. "If something happens, you get her into the escape pod." "No arguments." Rayan stood, her hands shaking. "You can't ask me to leave you." "I'm not asking," he said, loading the rifle. "I'm telling you. Don't make me drag you there myself." The engines roared outside, shaking the ground. A storm of dust rose into the air as Imperial ships descended, sleek and cold. The Empire's emblem gleamed on their hulls. Silver wings spread across a black circle. Jalen took a deep breath, staring at them through the cracked viewport. "Well, guess they brought the whole choir." He opened the ship's hatch and stepped out, the windless air cutting against his face. He climbed the rocky ridge, rifle in hand, his shadow long under the pale light. The first dropships landed in the distance, soldiers in white armor pouring out like ants. Jalen took position behind a broken mining vehicle, waiting until they got close enough. Then he fired. The sound echoed through the empty valley. A soldier fell, another stumbled. Chaos rippled through the Imperial line. Plasma bolts cut the air, burning the rocks around him. Jalen grinned under his breath. "Come on, you bastards, inside the ship." Rain clutched her daughter tightly. Luma's glow brightened again, her small hands trembling. "Mama," she whispered. "The human is in pain." Rayan's eyes filled with tears. "He's protecting us, love. I can help," Luma said softly, her eyes glowing brighter. "The ship listens to me." Rain shook her head. "You'll burn yourself out." Luma smiled weakly. It's okay. Before Rain could stop her, the girl placed her hand on the ship's control core. The lights flared. The entire cruiser began to hum with energy. Outside, the old turrets twisted, aiming with new precision. Jalen ducked behind the rocks as plasma fire lit up the sky. Then, without warning, the Ranger's Mercy fired. A burst of blue energy ripped through the battlefield. Throwing soldiers into the air, Jalen looked up, stunned. What the hell? Through the dust, he saw the ship glowing like a heartbeat. Alive, he realized what had happened. Kid, it's you, isn't it? He whispered, half laughing, half terrified. Rain appeared at the hatch, her voice carried by the comm. She's helping you. The ground shook again as one of the Imperial ships exploded mid-air. Jalen ran back toward the cruiser, firing as he went. The last wave of troops was closing in. He reached the hatch, slamming it shut behind him. That bought us some time, he said. Breathing hard, but Rain wasn't smiling. She was kneeling beside Luma, whose light had faded again. The girl's breathing was shallow. She saved us, Rain whispered. But she's slipping away. Jalen dropped beside her. His voice rough. No, she's not after all this. He reached for her small hand. Come on, kid, you're tougher than any Empire. For a moment, her eyes flickered open. She looked at him weakly. Did we win? He smiled, voice breaking. Yeah, kid, you did. Outside, the wreckage burned bright against the dark sky. The Empire had fallen silent. For now, Jalen sat beside the mother and child. His jacket torn, his hands shaking. He looked out at the burning horizon. They'll send more, he said. Rain nodded, wiping her tears. Then we'll be ready. And there, on that broken moon beneath the ruins of war, a promise was born. Not of soldiers or machines, but of a bond stronger than steel. A human who refused to run, an alien mother who refused to break, and a child whose light could change the galaxy itself. The fire from the wrecked Imperial ship still burned across the horizon, turning the cold dust of the mining moon into a field of glowing embers. The sky was quiet now, too quiet, the kind of silence that followed after violence. Inside the Ranger's Mercy, the air was thick with smoke and exhaustion. Jalen sat slumped in the pilot chair, his arms covered in ash and blood that wasn't all his own. He stared at the radar, no blinking dots this time, no pursuit, no enemy left in orbit, just static and silence. He let out a slow breath, the kind that carried both relief and sorrow. Behind him, Rain sat beside her daughter. Luma's breathing soft and shallow. Her glow had faded to almost nothing. Rain's hand shook as she brushed the child's cheek. She's too weak, she whispered. Her body can't hold that kind of power. Jalen turned, eyes heavy but focused. She's a fighter, he said softly. She'll pull through. Rain looked at him, her voice breaking. You don't understand. She's been running since she was born. Every time she uses her gift, she gives away part of herself. She won't survive another surge. He didn't answer, just clenched his jaw. He couldn't accept that. Not after everything they had endured. He stood, walked toward the ship's engineering bay, and pulled open an old metal panel. The reactor hummed faintly beneath it. Still damaged, still unstable. What are you doing? Rain asked, her voice sharp. Buying her time, Jalen said. This ship's got a pulse generator that can share power between systems. I can redirect it, feed her energy through the biostation. Rain's eyes widened. That could kill you. He gave her a faint smile. Wouldn't be the first stupid thing I've done this week. He started working, his hands moving fast, sparks flying as wires hissed under pressure. The ship's lights dimmed, transferring power toward the medical bay. A soft blue light began to form around Luma's body. Her skin glowing faintly again. Rain looked between them. Tears falling freely. Why? She whispered. You owe us nothing. You don't even know us. Jalen paused for a moment. Looking back at her. Maybe not, he said quietly. But I know what it's like to lose everything. And I'm not letting that happen to her. Rain covered her mouth, her heart twisting. No one from her own world had ever spoken like that. No one had ever fought for them this way. Minutes passed, then an hour. The glow in Luma's body slowly steadied. Her breathing evened. Rain's trembling hand touched Jalen's arm. She's stabilizing, she whispered. It's working, he exhaled, shoulders dropping. Told you she's tough. The ship's power levels dropped dangerously low, alarms flickering weakly before fading again. Jalen shut the console off, saving the last reserves. The moon outside was quiet, the fires dying down. He sat beside them, finally allowing himself to rest. The silence between them was no longer heavy. but peaceful for the first time. It felt like safety. Luma stirred, her eyes fluttering open, soft light returning to her pupils. "Mama?" Rayan caught her hand, laughing and crying all at once. "Yes, love. I'm here." The child turned her head slightly, spotting the human sitting nearby. "You stayed?" she said softly. Jalen smiled, tired but genuine. "Yeah, kid. I'm hard to get rid of." She reached out her small hand toward him. "You're warm," she said simply, then closed her eyes again, falling into a peaceful sleep. Rain looked at him, her voice low. "You've done more than anyone I've ever met." Jalen shook his head. "Nah, she did all the hard work." They sat there for a long time, the sound of the ship's faint hum filling the air. Outside, the stars began to rise again over the gray horizon. Jalen finally stood, gazing out through the cracked viewport. "They'll come again, won't they?" he said quietly. "Yes," Rayan replied. "The Empire doesn't stop." "Then we won't either," he said, his tone calm but certain. Rayan frowned slightly. "You mean, you'll stay with us?" He looked back, his expression softening. "Someone's got to keep this bucket flying," he said with a small grin. "Besides, I kinda like the company." Rain smiled for the first time in days. "You're an odd human," she said. "I get that a lot," he replied, moving to the controls. He typed in a new set of coordinates. The ship's map projected a glowing trail across the galaxy, away from Empire space, toward the unknown. "There's a free zone beyond the old rings," he said. "No Empire, no patrols, just traders, miners, and people trying to start over." Rain watched the map, her eyes glimmering. "A home?" she asked. "Maybe," Jalen said. "Or at least a place where no one cares who you were, only who you are." He looked back at the sleeping child, her glow steady and calm now. "She deserves that." The engines rumbled weakly, the ship rising from the moon's surface. As it climbed through the thin atmosphere, the sun broke over the horizon, casting golden light through the cracked windows. Rayan turned to Jalen. "What will you tell them, if they ask who we are?" He smiled faintly, hands on the controls. "I'll tell them the truth," he said, "that I once found an alien mother and her child on a dying world, and they saved me more than I saved them." The Ranger's mercy broke through the clouds. Leaving the broken moon behind, the engines hummed louder, brighter. The stars stretched out ahead like a promise waiting to be kept. And as the ship disappeared into the black, a legend began to form, about the human who defied an empire for a mother and her child, and the small voice that once silenced the stars. A story that would travel farther than any fleet ever could, whispered wherever hope still lived in the dark corners of the galaxy.